Happy Thursday, everyone. Welcome in GC Live. Jack Veltri, Ethan Carter here for Gamecock Central. And guys, we are officially less than 24 hours away from the start of the 2026 college baseball season. South Carolina will open the season on Friday afternoon, taking on Northern Kentucky on opening day at Founders Park. And it's going to be a little bit different because the Gamecocks will have an opening day doubleheader. That has not happened in quite a long time. I can't really remember the last time something like that's happened. So it's going to be quite unique being over at the ballpark and getting 18 innings right out of the gate. But, of course, appreciate you guys tuning in again. I'm Jack Veltri, joined by 2010 College World Series champion and good friend of the show, Ethan Carter. Ethan, how we doing, buddy?
Doing great, man. Happy to be back home in my office. Got my Gamecock stuff around and on the doorstep of a new season, and couldn't be more excited to sit here and talk some Gamecock baseball with you.
Yeah, we've got a lot to talk about, just like we did when we picked the show back up last week. Plenty to dive into as we're going to talk all things Gamecock baseball, everything you need to know before the season does begin. But before we get into any of that, real quick, got to talk to you guys about our good friend, sponsor of the show, Clint Hammond of CMG Home Loans. In the market to buy a home or need help with your mortgage, give a call to our guy, Clint, 803-422-6797. NMLS number for him is 71597. Or go to clinthammond.com for more info. He will get you on the right path towards buying that home that you want or helping you out with your mortgage, like he said. He is a lifelong Gamecock fan, longtime supporter of Gamecock Central. So, you're in the right hands with a guy like Clint, been in the mortgage industry for more than 20 years now. So if you are watching live right now, seeing us on screen, all of his information is above us. But like I said before, 803-422-6797. MLS number 71597, clinthammond.com. More info. Thank you, Clint. All right. Let's get right into the thick of things. We will start with the announcement that came yesterday, to the surprise of nobody. And as promised last week, I said we were going to talk more about this leading into opening day, but the weekend rotation is official. It will be Riley Goodman starting game one on opening day tomorrow. Shortly thereafter, Ant Phillips will get the ball in the second game of the doubleheader. And then Brandon Stone will start on Saturday. The current expectation, according to Paul Mainieri, is that those guys will probably go no more than 75 pitches, looking at about 4 to 5 innings of work max. And that's going to mean you're going to have to rely on the bullpen a lot this weekend. But as we'll get into here shortly, I think Mainieri does have a decent plan for what to do when it's time to turn the ball over to the bullpen. But before we get into that, first, any thoughts on what the rotation looks like? Any surprises? I know Stone was definitely probably the big surprise, but can't say I'm shocked about Goodman or Phillips getting into the rotation.
Yeah, I think Riley getting the nod game one was a little bit of a surprise, but as I know you've kind of detailed in your previews and everything, he's looked really good this preseason. So, he's definitely earned the opportunity there. Like you just said, having to manage 18 innings on day one is not exactly the easiest task. It is one good thing I will say is that this will give some guys that may not have pitched this weekend, if it was just a regular Friday, Saturday, Sunday, because guys would have a day off and everything. This could give some guys that were a little bit lower on the pecking order a chance to get in there and look real good for 2 innings and kind of get to the front of the mind of coach, next time he's kind of mapping out his weekend bullpen stuff.
Yeah, so the initial plan that Paul mentioned today, and we were talking with him earlier this afternoon, previewing the season, is the plan's going to be 4 or 5 innings out of those starters, at least on Friday. And then the ball is going to be turned over to, ideally, it'll be Josh Gunther in game one and probably Alex Valentin in game two. So I don't know what the plan is beyond that, but at least for right now, Paul is really hopeful that when they turn the ball over to those two pitchers out of the bullpen, they're going to be able to go the rest of the way. And then after that, so they don't really have like a true closer right now. I think Josh Gregoire was ideally going to be that guy, but he really struggled towards the end of the preseason, the ULM transfer closer. I mean, look, it's going to be by committee probably to start the year, especially early on this upcoming series and next week where you're playing 5 games in 6 days. And after that, like you won't play 2 midweeks every week. Like it's going to be your Tuesday or Wednesday game, and then you're playing 3 games on the weekend. And I think South Carolina will be better able to manage that when it comes up. But at least to start the year, you're playing a lot of games right out of the gate. A lot of guys are going to pitch, probably like you said, Ethan. And honestly, hopefully South Carolina's bats score enough runs and it's like blowout territory in all 3 games to where it's like you don't have to use – like Gunther's probably still going to be the first arm out of the bullpen and Valentine, but it's not like they need to necessarily go the distance, like 5th inning through the 9th inning the rest of the way. Like you can use other guys that you wouldn't use in those situations when it's like a 10-run lead or something like that. And honestly, hopefully, I would imagine the run rule is going to be in place.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you that. Is that determined by the home team generally? And
So typically it is. I think for these types of games, it's going to be South Carolina's discretion. I believe there's some instances where the teams have to agree. It might actually just be in general, but
honestly, with it being a doubleheader on Friday, that I'm sure that both coaches are going to agree that if this thing gets out of hand, we don't want to have to burn a bunch of dudes for full 9. So yeah, to your point, hopefully the bats and Big Red here, hopefully the bats will do their part. But like I said, it's going to be an opportunity for some guys that maybe coming out of the preseason didn't think they had a ton of opportunity. That this is, like you said, 5 games in 6 days is not an easy feat, especially this early in the year. So there's going to be guys that are going to get chances to go out there and produce, and they can parlay that. I don't think we think of pitching like hitting a lot of times that you can get hot, because hitting's so repetitious, so every day, you can really see a guy get hot at the plate and got to get his bat in there every day. But pitching can be the same way. Guy can get on a heater, and if a guy can get that confidence going in the first 2-3 weeks of the season, somebody that you don't expect to be a big arm for you, when SEC play rolls around, hey, you might find 1 or 2 guys that you're like, yeah, we can turn and rely on this guy, and now we've got a little bit more depth than we even thought we had.
Adam asks an interesting question here in the chat, and feel free to drop any questions or comments you guys have in the chat below. Always appreciate it. Any freshman you see becoming an all-SEC freshman team member by the end of the year? I'm going to go Riley Goodman. I think keeping the conversation about the pitching, I think he's probably the only guy I would say is – because they only have three freshmen on this team, and Riley would technically count since he's a redshirt freshman and didn't pitch last year. So I would see him being that guy. I think he's a potential like freshman of the year type of candidate. Like he's a real interesting arm. Throws super hard, touches close to 99 on the radar gun. Like he's everything you want in a Friday night ace pitcher. And when I kind of asked about him about that earlier today, I think I framed the question like, do you feel any pressure as a freshman to like you're the ace of the staff right now? Is there any pressure that comes with that? And he honestly felt like he doesn't try to place pressure on himself. Like when you look at this rotation in general, the way he views it, it's like there's not like an ace. It's like everyone's kind of doing their part to get the job done. And I think that's a good way of putting it. But no doubt about it, tomorrow is going to be – I'm sure there's going to be some butterflies in his stomach, getting that first start, taking the mound. Once you get through the first inning, though, Ethan, you could speak to this. I mean, once you get through the first inning in your first college outing, it's like, all right, let's go out here, and it's just baseball after that.
Yeah, no, the first inning's always the most is always the toughest. And it being a 1:00 start should help too, to be perfectly honest, because generally these Friday games are 4 or 5 o'clock starts. So 1:00 start for a redshirt freshman. you don't have as much time to think on it. He'll wake up. He'll probably get to the ball field 1 o'clock start. He'll probably get to the ball field around 8 or 9. It's always a little different with starters, but he'll get to the ballpark. He'll get his pregame meal. He'll do whatever training room stuff he does beforehand, and then it's go time. So there's not going to be a lot of time killing throughout the day for him. So that will definitely be a thing. But I'll never forget. I was a starter in high school, but my freshman year I was a relief man, and I'll never forget. We opened up with Duquesne, and I was tasked to pitch like the 8th inning or something. It was relief, and I threw so much in the bullpen. I probably threw 2 innings in the bullpen before I ever got out there. And Coach Calvi, made a remark. He's like, "All right, we'll get that down to an inning before it's all said and done." So it is there are some jitters, there are some nerves. It definitely helps, going out there starting. You'll have your routine. It's something you can really stick to, and you have a firm timeline. So, yeah, he's gonna be a little jacked up, but I think the 1 o'clock start and having a year under his belt, kind of watching everything, it will be. I have faith that he's gonna look real good tomorrow.
Yeah, I have no doubt he'll look probably really good, and it's Northern Kentucky. We're not gonna learn what this team really is for. Probably, honestly, I'd even say next week we'll probably learn a little bit about this team because you're playing the service academies, and from what I hear talking to those guys, I mean the service academies are going to bring everything they've got in terms of giving you a fight. But the Clemson series realistically is when you're like, all right, what do we know about this team? What have we learned? And we're going to learn a lot about what Riley's going to be like pitching in the big spotlight and taking on, whether he wants to say it or not. He is shouldering this pitching staff right now as the current ace of the staff. And that is a lot of pressure for a young guy. But if there's anyone that I think has the stuff to handle it, it's definitely him. And the way he goes about his business, I think is going to really serve him well. He does not pitch like a young guy that is under a microscope. He seems to be very poised for someone that's going to be making his first career start tomorrow afternoon. All right, can probably flip it over now to, we're getting a lot of questions here about the offense. Yeah. We'll kind of start here and we'll go down the list. Adam says, issue is our offense has to do well against better teams, non-conference struggles in SEC play. I agree. I think South Carolina, like I said, we're not going to learn a ton if South Carolina is blowing these teams out and winning by double digits. Like we saw that last year and then got to Clemson. They get swept. Bats are inconsistent. And then from there, it's kind of hit or miss the rest of the year. I think this offense is going to be relatively decent this year. You got a lot of guys that I think have a lot of potential. It's just the thing about potential is they really have to perform. And yep. I don't know. There's no telling because some guys had really rough preseasons. Some guys didn't. I will ask from your perspective when you guys were going through preseason scrimmages, who was a guy that you can remember, and maybe even yourself, of a guy who struggled in those scrimmages, and then once the season started, they just automatically turned it on?
So I'm thinking back to the 2010 team. Probably, I mean, some of the older guys, honestly, in the preseason stuff, they're working on things. So the one that comes to mind is Witt. Witt knew he was starting. Witt knew really where was Witt going to start because he was so versatile. And yeah, Witt was working on things. Witt was working on his bunt game, his stolen, his base running. So some of these older guys that have been around for a little bit, they're trying to fine tune some things in the preseason, and that can kind of show some spotty results. And it kind of works both ways. As a pitcher, I see the same hitter for, I don't know how long they scrimmage now, but
3 weeks. It's not.
Yeah. See, when we scrimmaged in the fall, we had 6 weekends. So we were facing the same guys for 6 weeks. So it is a little bit different in that, the first 3 or 4 weeks, pitchers had guys' numbers. I mean, that's just kind of the way it goes. And then by about week 5, 6, then the guys start to really lock in and start to hammer it home. But yeah, I think some of the older guys use the fall and definitely the preseason to fine tune and work on their approaches, and they're trying to work on their approach more than really a results based thing. They're working on their approach. All right, am I seeing the ball out of this hand well? All right, I'm looking to see if I can hit a 2-1 breaking ball instead of just sitting fastball the whole time. So there's definitely guys that are going to be, tweaking and fine tuning, and now they're putting it all together. They're going in with their best approaches and really trying to put their best foot forward.
What does the starting lineup look like for tomorrow? Adam asks. Well, I'll break it down by position. And we'll dive into this. Kind of segues a little bit into the injuries that South Carolina is dealing with, the updated injuries that is. So we'll get into that in a second. Catcher's going to be Talmadge LeCroy. First base is going to be Bo Hollins. Second base would be Logan Sutter. Shortstop, KJ Scovey, obviously. Third base is going to be Dawson Harmon. Right field should be Patrick Evans tomorrow. Luke Uhas, maybe. It's actually funny, speaking of the injuries. Aaron Jameson, a transfer from JUCO, originally played at West Virginia for a year. He had really not been doing too well in the preseason, Ethan. And then this past weekend, he hit 2 homers off of Stone, was hitting like extra base hits all over the place, ended up hitting about 300 in the preseason. Paul Maneri was set to start him in right field tomorrow, which I guess meant Evans wouldn't start. But as we'll get into now, Aaron Jameson has the flu, and that's kind of been going around here with the team. Dawson Harmon had the flu last week. So Jameson won't play tomorrow. So that's why I'm going to go with Evans in right field. And then center field's going to be Tyler Bach, and in left field, Ethan Lozama. DH is a little bit more up in the air, but if it were up to me, my projections, I'm probably going Reese Moore, transfer catcher from Iowa, though we'll see what happens. Kind of speaking on the injury front, as I mentioned, Jameson will likely be out tomorrow. Patrick Evans is fine after missing Tuesday's scrimmage. Will Craddock will not play this weekend with an abdominal strain. He's been throwing and starting to take some dry swings. And I believe Paul said today he's supposed to be taking some cuts off the tee today during practice. And then a little bit more on the pitching staff side of things. Alex Philpott, who we talked about last week, is going to probably be out until the start of SEC play. No surprise there that he'll be out this weekend. But he and Cullen Horowitz, relief pitcher for the Gamecocks, will be evaluated on Monday, or reevaluated, I should say, with some arm injuries. So the hope is that they will begin throwing again after being reevaluated. With the starting lineup, anything that surprises you? Any thoughts, comments? Like, I would imagine that's what we talked about is probably going to be the starting 9. I couldn't tell you what order that lineup's going to be in. I will say Bo Hollins being in the starting lineup. I don't know if we really talked about him last week, but I mean, he wasn't even playing in scrimmages last weekend. Like when we talked last Thursday, Ethan, or Friday, whatever it was, he hadn't swung a bat yet. And there he is Friday afternoon at the team's scrimmage, swings at a first pitch fastball from Ant Phillips and hits it into center field for a single. So he's going to be good to go. Any thoughts on this lineup, though? How things are shaping?
Yeah, I think this is when the transfers came in, like when the roster was kind of announced. I think this is what you envisioned. I know kind of third base was up in the air and that right field spot was up in there, but for the most part, I think this is what we had all kind of envisioned. Maybe the catcher spot. We talked about that last week. There's no reason to beat the dead horse on that. But I think this is the lineup you kind of envisioned. I think it's a solid deep lineup. I don't think there are going to be many outs that or there are not going to be many guys that come up and you're just like rolling your eyes like, all right, well, who's hitting next? I think it's a deep lineup. I think it's a pretty seasoned lineup. And I think you're going to see some guys really look to to get rolling on a hot start for the first part of the year. So nothing to really add with the lineup. No real surprises. I'll be interested to see the order. Like you said, we're not going to know that till coach turns that lineup card in and they post it on the Gamecock baseball Twitter account tomorrow. But I'll be real interested to see what that looks like for the first game or the first for the first few games, because I know coach is going to mix and match a little bit, especially with a entirely new lineup pretty much. So it will be interesting to see what that looks like. Where do you kind of the name I know everybody's focused on, where do you kind of see KJ hitting in this lineup?
So I'm trying to think about what I had in my projections. So I had Tyler Bach. Tyler Bach's going to lead off for this team. I think we know that. Dawson Harmon's going to hit second. I think those are two gimmies. I think depending on it'll be interesting what they do with Evans, because he's typically been batting third in these scrimmages. If it's not Evans batting third, it's going to KJ's probably going to hit either 3 or 4 in this lineup, which I think it's fine. Ideally, I think I'd like to see him batting like 5th or 6th, maybe, just because he doesn't have he hit 8 home runs last year, which is a lot on this team. But I don't know. I don't view him as like the power threat on this team.
Yeah, he's more. You think of him more gap to gap than really over the fence.
Yeah, I don't think of compare him to like Ethan Petrie. I don't think of him like a Ethan Petrie power hitter. I think of Dawson Harmon and Ethan Lozama as those guys in this order that can really do some damage. But I kind of like KJ in the middle, maybe to break it up a little bit between Harmon and Lozama, who I would imagine are batting 2, 3, 4 in this lineup. We'll see where Evans fits in. But, yeah, KJ I think is probably going to be batting 3rd or 4th tomorrow, and I'd feel pretty good about that. Lozama's probably right behind him in the lineup, and then you squeeze Evans in there. I would imagine 6, 7, 8, and 9 is probably looking like Bo Holland's probably 6th. 7's I would think is probably Logan Sutter. What other positions am I missing? Probably Talmadge LeCroy, maybe 8th, probably 8th. And then you got the DH, which in my opinion should be Reese Moore, batting 9th. So you have a little bit of balance with a lefty at the top of the order, you have a lefty at the bottom of the order, and then you have a lefty or switch hitter in Hollins mixed in that 6 or 5 hole, wherever you really want to plug him in. Oh, and Lozama in the 4 hole. So you have a real mix of lefty and righty bats. That's perfect. That's what you want. You got the contact bats in the top of the order and bottom of the order, and then you have your power in the middle, and also some speed on the bases.
Yeah, and I'd like to know what you think about this. I don't think this team has a big bopper like it did with Ethan in the middle of the lineup, but I think a lot as the lineup as a whole, I think you're going to see more power out of this team from top to bottom.
They're not going to have a guy that hits 20 home runs this year. I don't think that's the case. What I could anticipate and expect and tell you guys, I think we see a few. I was talking with somebody. I was talking with somebody in the program probably this time last summer, and I was asking about all these portal guys, and they were telling me I think South Carolina is probably going to have mostly double-digit home run guys. That could mean 10 home runs. It could mean 11. Could mean 12. But I think this team is going to be – they're going to have power. Dawson Harmon, Ethan Lozama, probably KJ Bo. Maybe – I don't know about Talmadge, but probably those 4 guys in particular are probably going to hit double digits for you. It's just about what does the rest of the lineup do. And honestly, Sutter as well. Sutter's kind of the dark horse in this lineup that if he produces – things really change because he did not have a good fall, did not have a single extra base hit this preseason. Ethan, this is a guy that had an 1,100 OPS last season, hit 15 homers and 22 doubles at Purdue.
Yeah, so he's all conference.
Yeah, all conference. He's a preseason All-American despite not doing much at all here in the preseason, getting ready to go for the season. He's going to get the start second base tomorrow, not based on what he did in the preseason, but based on what South Carolina expects him to be. And if he doesn't produce after that, then it's okay, who else can start at second base in the inevitable future? You don't hope You hope that does not have to come down to.
Yeah, exactly. He's going to have, based on his pedigree, he's going to have a little bit of a runway. Probably this is, coach has his own timelines on things, but he's probably going to get a runway through Clemson. That's going to be, 10, 12 games. He's going to have a runway to show, what he's got. And with somebody with that kind of pedigree and who's had, success like this in the past, I don't really worry too much on that. And going to a new spot's always not the easiest thing in the world. So hopefully he's gotten through some of those growing pains of being with a new team and a new city, new place. But to your point, I think he's the dark horse and can really unlock some things with this lineup.
No, he totally should. Like, if he hits to his capabilities, like, he's going to be in the middle of the order by the end of the year. Like, he should realistically be what you're missing in terms of power in this lineup. Like, he should be the guy that is, like, ideally you want Tyler Bach, Dawson Harmon, Logan Sutter, and then Ethan Lozama as your heart and top of the order. And KJ and Bo, those guys are going to provide power in the lineup, but they don't have to be the guys that are providing all the power, if that makes sense. Like, it should be Logan Sutter, Lozama, and Harmon, but we will have to see how that all shakes out. As we kind of look ahead to the season here, we talked about it a little bit last week with the preseason poll, picked 15th in the conference. Not many people are expecting much out of this team. I think it's probably the biggest question that a lot of people have is because a lot of them are kind of thinking like, okay, like not really excited for the season because of what happened last year. But let's kind of dive into it here. What would you say to this fan base that is kind of down and out on this team right now? Even before the season starts, it's a new roster. What gives you personally confidence that this year has potential to be different?
I think you have got a bunch of hungry dudes who have come from success at other programs that in the past, I think I said this last week, in the past I feel like our transfers have been from almost feeder schools, like some smaller schools, and when they get to this level, it's kind of overwhelmed them in the past. I think with this group, you've got a good base of a couple real good returners in KJ and Bo, and then you've got some guys that have done it. They have played in bigger conferences against really good competition, and they have done good things. And I think, and I mean, to be quite honest, when you have a team of veterans like this that see their name down as the 15th ranked team in the conference out of 16, I think that's going to, these guys are going to play with the chip on their shoulder. I think they're going to play with some fire, and I think this team is primed to really get to SEC play and put it on some teams that think, all right, well, this is our weekend with South Carolina. We can go ahead and pencil 2 in. I think these guys are going to play with a certain streak in them that is just going to catch a lot of teams off guard. And, and then once they get in the Carolina play, once they get this conference play and have that confidence, I think these guys can roll. Is it probably going to be a little too much to ask them to be in the top third of the conference? Maybe. But I don't foresee them being in the bottom third of the conference this year. I think 15th is a slap in the face to a lot of these guys. Now, somebody's got to be the 15th ranked team in the conference. So, but that's, preseason polls are preseason. They mean jack squat when it comes to once you get on the field. So I think if anything, that preseason ranking is really going to light a fire under these dudes. And, I know this fan base is in a show me state right now. They want to see it before they get on board. But me personally, the way I like to go about life, I like to be there first I like to be there at the beginning. I don't like to jump on there at the end. So, I would encourage fans to get tickets and go out there and see these guys early, and then you form a bond with the team, man. There's nothing like, forming that connection with a team that can go on and do special things. Like that's both special for the fans, and I'll tell you, it's real special for the players. Like, you see the same faces in the crowd. You see Founders Pat. That really does make a difference, and I hope the fan base doesn't wait till midway through SEC to embrace this team. I hope that some the hard feelings and the hard times that where it happened the last couple of years can be put to the side a little bit, and like we say in baseball, you got to flush it. Flush last season. This is a brand new team. Don't hold last year's team's failures against this squad, because I think you're doing a disservice to the team, but you're also doing a disservice to yourself as fans. And I'm never going to tell people how to fan, but it's
a good point though.
Yeah, because I'm not.
Yeah, you look at, like, last year has nothing to do with this year. Besides the same coaching staff and a few players here and there, you can't hold last year again. The only person you can hold last year against is Paul Maneri, right? Because he's the one at the top running the show. And if things go sour again this year, then who knows? Maybe South Carolina moves on from him at season's end. But I think I'm going to be really interested to see how the crowd look this weekend, like opening day. If opening day is not a good crowd tomorrow, I'm going to be kind of stunned. Like, I know it's a 1 o'clock first
pitch. For game two. Especially for game two. I will, because I'll be right here in my office. I got my little TV right here. I work a 9 to 5 like most everyone else. I'll be sitting right here with the game on my television tomorrow. But so if that 1 o'clock game rolls around, it's a little bit of light crowd. Understandable, is a little bit late notice, double header announcement, but game two should feel like an opening day crowd. It really should.
It should, and hopefully Saturday is the same exact way, because there's no basketball going on this weekend in Columbia that's going to take you away from going to the ballpark. But I will say, like you said, I think they can. And here's a good question here from Big Red. I think having the preseason polls shake out the way it is, because look, somebody has to be 15th, like you said, Ethan, and it's got to be South Carolina, because they were very bad last year, and it's the same thing with why Missouri is at the bottom. The difference between South Carolina and Missouri is, no offense to Missouri, they don't care about baseball. South Carolina does care about baseball, and I do think South Carolina has gotten better. The problem is that every other team besides Missouri in this conference, maybe even Missouri, has gotten better. I don't know, honestly. I don't keep up with what's going on halfway across the country. What I will say, though, is I think every team in this conference has gotten better. And so you're not putting South Carolina, a team that won only 6 conference games last year, ahead of most teams in here. And so I understand it. Can they use it to their advantage? Potentially, right? The thing that's going to, and this doesn't just go for the players, but it goes for the fans too. If South Carolina can just find a way in 2.5 weeks' time to take a series against Clemson, I think that's going to be the early indication of where this fan base is at and where the team is at.
Because I mean, remember, they were in those games against Clemson last year. A break goes their way, and they take 1 or 2 of 3.
That's very true, especially games 1 and 2. People forget.
I think time does no favors to the nuance of these games. And when it comes down to it, you look back on a season, you either see a W by that game or you see an L by that game. But I think it's real easy to put off that. Yeah, well, we got swept by Clemson. Yeah, I mean, we did, and that's when it comes to giving credit, you get credit for wins, you get credit for losses, but Clemson did not embarrass this program last year. They were not leaps and bounds better than this baseball team or that baseball team. And I think this baseball team's a better version than last year's. So I think that you come out there and you string a few wins together here early, and you are gearing up for that series against Clemson, and you're really gonna find out a lot about this team then.
Yeah, totally. I mean, like, that is going to be the SEC play, when that starts against Florida, like if South Carolina gets swept against Florida, that's going to really tell me, okay, this team might not be very good this year. The Clemson series, it can feel that way, but it's also like it's February, right?
Yeah.
We're just going into March at that point. So you hope South Carolina you want to make it competitive, but you also want to take a game or two. You go into Clemson, take a game on the road on Sunday, avoid a sweep or something. Okay, that's progress. But I think ideally with 2 games being in Columbia, Friday night is going to be at Founders Park, Saturday will be at Segra, and then Sunday afternoon will be at Clemson. You really are hoping you can find a way to take 2 of 3, because I think that's a lot easier than what the alternative was last year, starting a series out at Clemson on a Friday night. You lose that game, then you lose a pitcher's duel on Saturday, and then Sunday was just a disaster at Founders. So, yeah, that's a few weeks from now. We'll talk more about that series in a few weeks when we really get down to it. But the point is, that's going to tell us a lot for this fan base and this team of what we can really expect moving forward.
Yeah, because I'll put this question not really to you, but I'd be interested. The people watching, my Twitter handle's down there, E_train32. Anybody listening, let me know at some point. I'd be interested if this team is. I think it's 8 games before Clemson. I think that's what it is. It's either 8 or 9.
Should be probably.
If this team is 7-1 or 8-0 when they play at home on Friday, February 27th against Clemson, you better tell me a reason why you're not at the game.
They should be undefeated by that point.
If you're not at that game, then I don't know what this team can do, because what are you going to wait for them to win Friday? And then you're going to be I'd be interested to hear from the fan base on this, because again, I know the last couple of years have scarred some people, and I get it. You work hard for your money. Everything's expensive these days. You want to spend your money wisely. But if this team is 8-0 on February 27th, there is no excuses for that place not to be absolutely jam-packed and ready to beat down that team in orange.
Could be. It's going to be Northern Kentucky for 3 games. You get 2 midweek games against, I believe it's Wofford and then Gardner-Webb. Look, South Carolina was great in midweek games against mid-majors last year. They went undefeated. So you're kind of hoping that's the same case. You're going to get Air Force, Army, and Navy. That'll be tough, but I think you can win all 3 games, no problem. And then you'll get one more midweek game in there before Clemson. So this team really has no excuse to be 8-1, 9-0, whatever it is. And Clemson will probably be undefeated by that point too. Clemson's going to be ranked. South Carolina won't be, but it gives South Carolina a great chance to really get the measuring tape out and see, okay, where are we really at through 3 weeks in the season? Superstition question here from Big Red. Has South Carolina ever been really good at football and baseball in the same year? 2 years ago, they were pretty good at both sports. You go back to 2010 through
2010. We won a national championship in football, won 10 games.
Yeah. So South Carolina was good in football and baseball from 2010 till 13. And
let's put it this way. I did not grow up a South Carolina fan. I'm a convert. I came to school. I came on my official visits, fell in love with Carolina, and I'll Carolina till the day I die. I did not realize that we never owned Clemson like this in football until I got out of college, because from 10 to 14, that is what I knew of Carolina football. And we were real good baseball at that time. So to that point, there was a good 4-year stretch, 5-year stretch. We were very good at both. So I'm hoping that we can get that back rolling this year.
Yeah. So we'll see. But it wasn't that long ago that South Carolina was 2024, for all intents and purposes, was not a great year, but it was the year after the Super Regional, and Gamecocks were in a much better place than I would take the way 24 went over what last year was or where they're at currently. And that's a better starting point than where they're at right now. All right. Let's start getting to some preseason projections. We're not going to necessarily predict what South Carolina's record's going to be, because honestly, I couldn't even tell you. Maybe
I can't tell you how many games there are.
There's 56 games. Maybe we'll get a benchmark. But I will say this. I think this team, I meant to mention this earlier, they only won 6 conference games last year. Typically, you need about 12 to 13 conference wins to get into the NCAA tournament as an SEC team, assuming you do well in non-conference play otherwise. I don't see why South Carolina can't win that many games the rest of the way. Like, go back to last year. I can think of off the top of my head a few games that they probably should have won. You look at the 2 games from that Texas A&M series. You got the Oklahoma series finale you blew in the 9th inning. There was probably a game at Kentucky that you probably should have won.
Texas.
I don't think they played Texas.
A&M. You're right. I'm thinking of A&M.
A&M.
I'm thinking of A&M.
A&M.
Yep.
LSU, no. Florida, no. Mississippi State, for sure. I think you probably had a chance to win that. Ole Miss, maybe. I mean, there were a lot of games last year where it's just like, if South Carolina could finish games off and play a little bit better, they're probably about somewhere in the borderline conversation for the tournament. So as bad as last year was, like, I'm not saying it to make this any better, but it just goes to show that, like, they're not, like, now that they have a much better roster, I don't think it's that far-fetched for this team to be around that 12 to 13 SEC win range, and that might be enough to get them into the tournament. So let's go ahead and talk a little bit of predictions for the year. I'll ask the first question here. How far do you see this team what is this team's ceiling in your opinion? Like, we know the floor is going to be missing the postseason and having a really bad year. We know that is hopefully not going to happen again this year. What is it in your opinion? Is it just simply getting to the postseason? Is it winning a certain amount of games? Like, take this any direction you really feel as to, by the end of the year, what does Ethan Carter see as improvement for this team?
Improvement's definitely getting to a regional. I think this team's ceiling is hosting a regional. And I think that, and I will preface that by saying, I think if you are a good SEC team, you're more than likely going to host. And I think this team has the potential to be a good SEC team this year. I think the bullpen's deeper. I think you're going to blow less games than you did last year. I was just kind of going through last year's schedule, and I mean, they lost a 10-11 game to Auburn.
That's another one. They lost that game. I don't know how they lost that game to Auburn.
They lost 3-7 to Kentucky. They lost 12-15 to A&M, 7-8 to A&M. They lost, 6-0 to Mississippi State, 5-7 to Tennessee, 7-11 to Tennessee. I think this team is deeper, and I don't think they're going to blow these games that they did last year. So I think improvement is making the postseason, because once you get there, anything can happen. You get there, and you're set up as I think the baseline for improvement of this team is being a 2 seed at a regional. I think their ceiling is hosting, and if you host, hey baby, you just got to win 3 home games.
100%.
So I think that's where I'm putting this team this year, is that you got to get. I think a 2 seed at a regional is your what should be your baseline, and I really think this team has potential to host. I do. I just, again, I don't see them blowing the amount of games that they blew last year. I agree. Yeah, I don't see how you can do that back-to-back years.
Yeah, I forgot about some of those games. Like Tennessee, it was a great example. Like, you score 7 runs against Tennessee and you give up 11, that's inexcusable. You score 10 runs at Auburn. I remember watching the game, sitting on my couch covering it, because I did not go to that series after how dreadful the season had been. That was right after they lost like 24-2, if I'm not mistaken. Mm-hmm. So scoring 10 runs should win you a ball game. And I think the pitching is, as long as they stay healthy the rest of the way, they should be in a better spot to really get the job done. And I'll answer this question right here from Big Red. What is more pivotal for South Carolina to be successful this year? Great pitching or great hitting? I'm gonna go great pitching because that's what really cost South Carolina last year. The offense, for all of its flaws and not being able to hit a lot of home runs, they did strike out less and they did put a decent amount of runs up on the board. And they hit some pretty good pitching along the way. It's just they could not pitch to save their lives. And they have the worst ERA in program history under Terry.
I think I'll even get a little bit more specific. I think good bullpen is gonna swing 7 of those games that they had last year.
And that's 13 wins right there. That's enough to get you into the postseason.
Yeah, I'm looking at one of the Tennessee games. They gave up 4 runs, 2 in the 8th, 2 in the 9th, and they lost 7-5.
Like, you have a better bullpen, you're winning that game. Like,
yep,
and
exactly.
I think they addressed those needs in the offseason. And I think it just goes to show how thin the margin for error is. And I'm refraining from using the "they weren't far off" phrase because they lost 24 conference games last year. So clearly something was up. Like, they lost a lot of bad games in there. Did not deserve to be in the postseason. But what we are saying is, like, go back through the games. Like, there were some that South Carolina totally had in the bag and blew along the way. I'll never forget being a College Station and South Carolina's a 10-run lead in the 6th inning and they blow it and lose 15-12. At that point, I was like, you know what, man, this season's done. They are rock bottom. They have to improve this roster, and I think they have. So for me, I'm kind of with you, Ethan. I think realistically, making the postseason is an attainable goal because, again, you need to just win. They're going to win at least, in my book, they'll probably win about what they did last year just on paper in terms of SEC games. It's just like you said, can you sneak your way into finding 13, 14 wins in this conference? Anything above 13 probably gets you into the tournament, I think. And I think that history tells us that you go 13-17 in the SEC or better, you're getting in. And that would be a monumental success for South Carolina in year number 2 under Maneri. It's not ideal because you brought this guy in to take you to Omaha, and getting to the postseason should just be an automatic checklist item, but it's not for this team in year 2. It's like, okay, that's a realistic goal. Like, now hosting, I'm a little less like thinking that's going to be the ceiling. I just think getting to the postseason is going to be what needs to happen this year. Hosting, I think if South Carolina's hosting a regional this year, I think Paul Maneri is SEC Coach of the Year. Go from the worst season in program history to, like, if Missouri didn't exist, South Carolina is the worst team in that conference last year. Arguably, they probably were. If South Carolina hosts a regional this year, I don't care what seed they are, that's an automatic. Paul Maneri has really turned this thing around and gotten this team back in a better place like he exactly said he was going to do. And then from there, like you said, it's anyone's game in the postseason, and it only helps that you're at home. So I think realistically, though, postseason, just getting there as a 2 or 3 seed is attainable. And if they can't make the postseason this year, I'd move on from this coaching staff. There's no excuse to not make the postseason. Like, I get it. People think this team's going to stink this year. I get it. But this team is different. This is a better overall roster with talent compared to last year. And this is Paul's team. That's the biggest difference here, is that he brought the players back he wanted to bring back. Most of them, that is. The other players, most of them, got booted to the door and aren't back. And that was meant to bring in the players that you wanted to bring in, and he did. Now it's just about if this team is really going to be that much better. If they aren't, sayonara, goodbye. But if they are what we think they can be, that's a good step in the right direction for this program.
For sure.
Second year. What, in your opinion, as we kind of start to close out a little bit here, I'm going to ask real quick, what's one reason for optimism and what's one reason to be concerned? I think people are probably more so concerned about this team, but give them a little bit of both.
Optimism, I think they rebuilt their bullpen, and I think that bullpen is going to be infinitely better than last year's bullpen. I think there was a concerted effort of getting guys who have pitched in relief in college baseball and have had different variations of success doing that. And I think that is your optimism, is that you are not going to be in these games where. Now, I'm not saying the bullpen's never going to blow a lead, guys. Don't
You're
hold
probably
me to
going to blow a
that.
game, but it's the game. It's the games that you just can't blow. Like, you can't blow a 10-run lead at Texas A&M. You can't blow I don't know what the lead was. I can't remember what the lead was against Tennessee that we mentioned. Like, you can't blow the games that you're winning by like 3 or 4 runs in the 7th, 8th, and 9th inning. You can't blow those games. Inexcusable.
So I think the reason for optimism is I think they have rebuilt the bullpen into what they want. There's power stuff out there. It's not, as much as I love guys like Veach and some of these other guys, it's not 80 changeups in a row. It's not 88 miles an hour coming out of the pen. I think because that's a valuable arm when you pair it with other guys that are coming throwing 95, 96 power sliders. So I think this staff has rebuilt this bullpen to be successful in a variety of ways. If you have skepticism, the injury to Jake McCoy really thins the margin for error on your starting staff and that health. I think the health of the starters right now is where I would be a little skeptical. I would be a little cautious in my optimism in that you've already lost Jake. Philpott is probably done until SEC play. So that just really, the margin for error, if one of the guys tweaks his back, not even thinking about an arm injury, a guy comes off the mound covering first and, has a little tweak in his hamstring. Then we're starting to get a little bit farther down on that depth chart. And I think they've got some guys that have pitched in starting roles before that have done well in other spots. But if I'm looking at a cause for concern, it is that starting pitching depth at this point.
Yes. I'm going to probably agree with you. The one thing, hearing Paul talk today made me think about this a little bit more, because I wouldn't have thought about it as a concern until he brought it up. Is he mentioned that Josh Gunther and Alex Valentine were probably more deserving to be in the starting rotation than Brandon Stone and Ant Phillips. Now, we go back to last year, specifically with a guy like Stone. We saw how much of a seesaw effect there was of he's starting one weekend, then he's pitching out of the bullpen the next. That's fine. That's fine through the first 3 weeks or so of the year. But once you get to conference play, man, you could speak better to this. I think you need to have everything figured out. And that's probably a concern for me that probably I don't think a lot of people think about, is the just amount of change that team went through last year in terms of roles. Matthew Becker is another example that we brought up last week of a guy that was your Saturday starter. By the end of the year, I couldn't even tell you what role he's pitching in. I mean, it was just it was anyone's guess at that point. So that's why I bring that up, because it's like it was curious to think about. Oh man, I almost wanted to ask Paul this, like in a way, like I just felt like he's going to go down the same route again of, if Phillips doesn't pitch 6 great innings by Clemson, he's going to be out of the rotation. I just don't agree with that necessarily, because what was the point in bringing that guy in then?
Right.
Because especially with your starting depth already kind of tanked a little bit with Philpott and Jake being out. Look, I get it. Like, if guys struggle, you got to move on and find a guy that is going to do well. It is the natural way of progression. Is if one guy's doing bad and another guy's doing well, you're going to go with the guy that gives you the best chance to win. I understand that. But you can't have this, at least unless it's proven that it works. But last year showed us it didn't. Is you can't have, we're going to start him one weekend, then we're going to pitch him out of the bull. Like, you can't have TBA pitching every single weekend. That's that's where it got rough.
Yeah, and to your point on the player side of it, like, yeah, if it's rough going, something's got to be figured out. But you also, I mean, to your example, yeah, if Amp goes out there and doesn't have a good game against Clemson and coach pulls the plug on that, what message are you sending to everyone else? Like that has a trickle down effect on the entire roster. Like,
it's not
all right, because then guys start pitching scared, and that's when guys are trying to
they overdo it.
Yeah, that's when guys are trying to really miss bats, and that's when you lead the league in walks and hit by pitches by 40, whatever it was they did last year. That's where there's a trickle down effect in that where I just you gotta kind of stick with some of these guys and show confidence, because guys aren't going to be great every time out. I mean, perfect example, Sam Dyson, man. Sam Dyson, if you were to go back and look at that 2010 team, he had some up and down starts, but when it came down to it, he could go out. He went out there against Arkansas and 8 shutout. Those performances are in some of these guys, and I think you've just got to kind of stick with that. Now, you can't have a ton of games where especially you're in conference play and you spot the team 4 runs before you even get to bat. Like that's tough. But I'm with you in that hearing that from coach does bring a little bit of concern, because you've got to stick with some of these guys.
Yeah, I agree. I think just a little bit more trust and faith can really go a long way, because I can really envision it now. One of these guys has a rough start at Clemson. Like maybe it's Brandon Stone who has a rough start. And to be fair, Brandon probably shouldn't have been in the rotation to begin with, because Philpott got hurt, McCoy got hurt. Injuries and pitching relatively well in the preseason got him this spot. Let's call a spade a spade. What I will say though is I can really see it now. Somebody's going to have a bad start against Clemson or one of these games, and it's going to be like, all right, pulling the plug. We're moving on to the next guy. That's the stuff that I think can get you in a little bit of harm's way, especially when you're already down depth in that rotation. So I worry about that a little bit. I wouldn't say it's going to happen, but it's something that made me think about it a little bit more when Paul kind of mentioned it today, that those guys are going to have to not earn their spots, but he kind of made it seem like in my mind, Phillips was an easy lock for the rotation. But when I heard Paul kind of talk about it, it didn't sound as cut and dry like that. So that makes me a little bit cautious. I'm like, what? Are we on the
it's
same planet
so
here?
Interesting, different coaches' styles. Because Maneri seems to be great for a quote. He seems to be great for a soundbite.
For better or worse, Paul can give you a heck of a quote.
And that is just everything. It's really antithetical to the way Coach Tanner, and I mean even Kingston for that matter, just antithetical to the way they ran the programs, is that it was very buttoned up. I could not imagine Coach Tanner saying that, well, this guy's starting on Saturday, but woo buddy, there are 2 others I thought were better.
That's that, and I agree to some extent that Gunther should be in the rotation, in my opinion. Like I would have put him in the rotation to start the year, but I understand why he's pitching out of the bullpen. I understand why Valentine's probably being in the bullpen, right? But what I just don't know if it sends a good message to those players, like, because I can imagine like Stone and Becker and whoever else kind of got the pull, besides Jake McCoy, like nobody else really. And I think Riley Goodman's in the same camp this year of, I don't think they're pulling the plug on a guy like that because they see the potential, but they should also see the potential in the other guys to let them work out of trouble if the situation calls for it, or getting the start the next week to bounce back. Like it should not be this seesaw effect. I just as
a former player, that's the quickest way to lose a locker room, is to do some of this stuff in the media that it feels like Paul does every now and then. And I think we really, and chicken or the egg last year, why everything happened. But, you kind of saw last year's team just kind of throw their hands up and was like, we're ready for the SEC. We're ready for Hoover our one game and get out. Like this team just seemed ready for that. So, and that some chicken and egg of, is it coach constantly talking about things to you guys in a way that's just like, that's better left just in the clubhouse, because nobody wants us to be talking about this every week. And so I'm with you. I think it'd behoove Hall of Fame coach Paul Mainieri. So take what I'm saying with a grain of salt, but I think it would behoove coach, especially with this new day of everything's out there. Like I can pull up on the old Twitter machine and see what he said at any moment. I think that stuff, like these guys can read it, these guys can see it, and these guys can get inundated with it in their comments and in their DMs. And I think it'd be best if coach handled some of that stuff more behind closed doors than kind of just saying whatever comes to his mind.
Yeah. So all right, I talked enough about the concerns. I'll give one real quick optimism. I do think it is going to be the fact that it just feels like a different team.
Yeah.
I can't tell you my point of, look, I didn't check out last year, but like mentally, like when I stopped going on road trips was after the A&M series. I'm just like, I'm not driving 5-6 hours on the road to go to Kentucky or go to Auburn when I can cover this game from home. That was kind of my point where I'm like, this team stinks. They were not good last year. I don't think we're going to get into that boat this year. So I am going to say, I think South Carolina, I've thought about it for a little bit now. I do think South Carolina is a capable team to get to the postseason. I refuse to believe that you have a winning coach like Paul Mainieri who clearly knows something about winning games, whether we like it or not, whether we like his decisions or not. The guy's a winner. And it's a very similar situation to year one at LSU, where that team underperformed, missed the postseason, and then the year two, they're really good. And I believe at the time, I think they won a national championship, if I'm not mistaken, whether it was 08 or 09, whatever year it was, that it was his second year. I don't know if that's going to happen, but I do think this team is capable of getting to the postseason. It's just guys have to perform. Your offense, the guys that you brought in to provide you power, need to hit for power. Logan Sutter cannot hit the way he hit in the preseason going into this year here. Otherwise, his spot's going to be taken up by somebody else. So I really do think guys across this order have to hit. Your pitching, I think, is going to be better. You can't blow games in the 7th, 8th, and 9th inning. So if all that happens for South Carolina and they kind of do the reverse roles of last year, they'll definitely get to double-digit wins. It's just, is it going to be enough to get into the postseason? I think this team can easily get to. It does not feel that tough for them, especially since I think the schedule is a little bit more manageable. Like you're going to the box. That's going to be tough. The rule of thumb is that you always need to win one on the road in a weekend series and take two at home. And I think that is very much possible since you're playing Missouri, Kentucky. You're getting – who else are you getting? You're getting Florida on the road. You get Mississippi State at home. The big thing is that you get Mississippi State at home, Arkansas at home, Bama at home. Like you're getting some favorable home series that you went on the road. Yeah, and Texas is at home too. Like if those were on the road, South Carolina's not winning those series. But given that it's at home, they can win a few of those series.
Yeah. No, like I said, I think to your point, this is a different team. It feels different. And my last little optimism is I just think it's a deep lineup, guys. I think that this lineup is going to 1 through 9 put pressure on these staffs. And the quicker you get into some of their bullpens and make those things work a little bit harder, those Saturday and Sundays aren't as much as barn burners on your end, and that you're really starting to put pressure on some of these guys. So I think the lineup 1 through 9 is going to be very good. I think the bullpen is going to be very good. And if the starting pitching can stay healthy, I think we're going to see good things out of this team this year.
I agree. So we have gone for over an hour here. I think we've hit on all of our points. So we both think South Carolina is probably going to the postseason, but it's going to have to play out that way. You really got to get off to a good start. And you got to hope for enough conference wins to get the job done. So it all starts tomorrow afternoon. First pitch of game 1 of that doubleheader will be at 1 p.m. Second game will be 45 minutes after. I think South Carolina's listed like at 5 o'clock. So 4:30, 5 o'clock will be the first pitch of game 2. Saturdays at 2 p.m., all at Founders Park, all on SEC Network Plus. Hope to see you guys out at the ballpark. If you see me there, feel free to say hi. Let's chat. Ethan, I know you won't be there, but I know you'll be watching from.
I'm gonna get down for a series this year. We're playing something. I'll get down for a series this year.
So we're looking forward to it, man. We're looking forward to hopefully a better year for this baseball program as the second year of the Pulmonary era begins tomorrow. So that's going to do it for us for now. We'll be back next Thursday recapping the weekend and the 5 games that took place. And then we're looking ahead to the big weekend series coming up against the service academies next week at Founders Park. So that's going to do it for now. For Ethan Carter, I'm Jack Veltri. Happy opening day eve, y'all. Happy opening day tomorrow, and we'll see you guys next time. Thanks so much for tuning in, and have a great weekend.